right, well, this is a story that I've been telling for a while now. It's a story that happened to my brother, Balde, when we were young in school. As it happened, it was a fall, kind of October-y football Friday night in my hometown of Donna, Texas. And well, being a Friday night, there was a lot of stuff going on, right? Football, dances after the football games, and just stuff that happens on a Friday, parties and the such. Well, as it turned out, my brother Balde, he had come home a bit early on a Friday night. He had played in a game, I do believe, a football game. Kind of attended the local dance after the football game at the high school, did stuff, but didn't stay too late there. He came home, tired, of the week and of obviously the football game. And when he arrived home, he went into the house, and instead of going straight to the his bedroom, he decided to kind of hang in the front interior living room, the couch, the sala, right? Back when we were growing up, that was the only room in the house that had a window air conditioning unit. So it was always cooler in that part of the house than the other parts. So he decided to sit down. And while he was sitting down, he noticed, or he heard, what he described as a humming sound, right? Now, at first, he just kind of, considered it was just maybe outdoor, sounds, ambiance of the outdoors that day, the way your body kind of listens to like that white noise of the day, and he was sitting down relaxing in the dark in the house on the couch. And once again, he didn't think nothing of it at the beginning, but he thought he heard like a humming sound coming. Well, as he settles into the silence of the night and the silence of the house, he kind of realized, no, it is humming, and it's coming from somewhere in the house, which was weird, right? For any humming anywhere, it's kind of a little strange. So when he started to kind of, pay attention to it, once again, it sounded like it was coming from somewhere in the house. So he kind of gets up off the couch, right? And he kind of walks towards the area, from the living room to where my parents' room is, because that's where he thought he heard it from, right? And it was kind of a low, kind of a strong humming, or at this point it was kind of muffled, but it was kind of like a hum. It was kind of almost like a pattern, right? But when he kind of looked or investigated to where my parents' room was, he goes, nah, that hallway, it's not coming from there. So he figured it must be coming from maybe the back of the house. Now, we lived in a small house, right? A small little frame home. So from the living room or sala, a couple of feet, to the left, there was like another, passageway, and it wasn't really a hallway, just a, area that you could walk through. But from the living room sala, from the front of the house, you could see all the way to the back of the house, to the other back door. And my brother, I remember him saying that kind of walked back there, and he saw the back door, and he noticed that the moon was out, so it was a nice moony type night, because he could see the moonlight coming through the back door, the frame, that had like a little window there, and he could see that the moon was out, but that he didn't think anything of it, or he was kind of looking, investigating, but he still heard that humming sound, that humming pattern, the hum. So he started to slowly walk, towards the back of the house. And as such, once again, because it was an open kind of area, he would have to pass through the kitchen, like a little dining / washroom area, and then finally to the back of the house that left like another little hallway passageway to the back room where his room was, the boys' room, where all of us slept, right? On the way over there, on the left somewhere, my sister had a room all to herself, just past the kitchen, right in between the kitchen and that laundry area. So as he started walking, he realized the humming was getting louder, right? He heard this humming, and the same humming, but it was getting louder. So he thought it is coming from the back of the house, or it's coming from the place I'm walking toward too. So as he kept walking, he did realize the humming was getting louder, that hum, and he was picking up more of that pattern. And as he got right past the kitchen to that laundry area, he kind of saw, we had a window. There was a window to that hallway that went to the boys' room. There was a window in that hallway against the back wall that you could see out. And once again, because of the light from the moon, you could see there was light coming from there. But more importantly, my brother saw that there was a silhouette of a figure, someone standing in the hallway in front of that window. And as he kind of looked, he once again heard that humming. But now that he was a little closer, he realized that it wasn't humming that he was hearing, but it was in fact the low kind of words and kind of articulation of what sounded like a prayer to him. My brother wasn't too sure at the time, but he said it sounded like someone was praying a rosario. Someone was, praying a rosary. Hold on, guys. I'm going to turn that down. Anyway, what my brother said was that he heard that it was someone praying like a rosary. Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracias, el Señor es contigo. Bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre, Jesús. He heard someone in Spanish. And when he kind of looked deeper, he realized that the person in front of the window was our dad, was my dad. And my dad was there kind of in his boxers, right? He had been in the house, obviously, and he kind of was sitting there or was standing there. And it looked like he was praying. And my brother approached him more, he did realize, no, he's definitely praying a rosary, kind of leaning against the window, kind of looking out. Dad had a set of rosary beads in his hands, and he was outside. And then after like one or two rosaries, right, Hail Marys, my brother kind of just, hey, kind of yelled out to him, hey, Dad, what are you doing? My brother kind of asked twice before it clicked, and my dad kind of looked at him. And what my brother told me was a little bit shocking. He said that my dad looked like he had been sweating, like he had gone through a race, or he just looked a little, disheveled, even if he was sleeping, right? He looked a little weird, a little off. And finally, my dad kind of noticed him, and without saying a word, he kind of gestured, to my brother to come over to where he was standing. And as my brother approached, my dad kind of told him to be quiet. Then he got really close to him and he said, venga conmigo, mira para afuera de la ventana, pero no digas nada. Come with me, let's go look out the window, but don't say anything. So as my brother approached, he kind of just was approaching him in a straight way. My dad was more at an angle. He looked out that little window. And when he looked out that window, kind of on a straightaway, he didn't really notice anything. But then my dad kind of gestured and motioned him, no, look over here to the neighbor's heart. Our neighbor was, to the right. And when my brother looked, he was pretty shocked. He was pretty awed by what he saw. Our neighbors to the right here, they had one of those hurricane chain link fences, those metal, fences. Well, what my brother told me is, perched on top of the fence, kind of looking and facing our way, was the biggest owl my brother had ever seen. I remember my brother telling me it was like life size. It was like a person size owl perched on the fence in the backyard, facing into our backyard. And what was more kind of shocking and astonishing was my brother told me that this bird was illuminated. The bird was shining. The bird was just like it had looked like it was an actual outdoor light. It was so bright. And what my brother thought was the moonlight that he could see from the other side of the house when he first started walking that way, it was actually the light coming off of this bird, this owl. Well, once again, that would kind of, shock anybody. And I remember my brother telling me that he said something like, wow, that's pretty cool, or something to the effect that he was like, wow, he was kind of liking it. But then my father quickly shut him down. He said, no. He goes, es lechuza. Now, my brother had heard that word lechusa quite often from the stories that were told in our childhood, right? Lechusas are these like kind of shape-shifting, witches, these demonic spirits, these evil spirits that go around, trying to snatch you or kill you or do bad things to you. As kids, we hear these stories all the time from the mothers, right? From our moms, or just from people that want us to be safe at night, right? Especially here where we grew up in the valley, right? So when my brother heard that, he kind of like looked, and it was a little off from what he had been told, but still, my father was very adamant that it's not a cool thing, that is a lechusa, a witch, if you would. And that my father, as my brother kind of come upon, was kind of doing some sort of spiritual, battle, or trying to create some spiritual force field with his Hail Marys, with the Rosario, and his, praying that evening right there by the window, right? And I remember my brother telling me that my dad made my brother kind of stay there with him as they went through, a couple of rounds of Hail Marys, right? So, after a while, I remember my brother telling me, he was tired, right? And he just wanted to go to bed. And he told my dad as such, right, that, I'm going to go to bed, right? Because my brother wasn't as, I guess, I don't want to use the word fearful, but I guess he didn't get the sense that it was as ominous as my father, kind of saw it. Once again, my father was a very religious, very, set in his ways, good Catholic man. And that's how he lived his life. And he knew the power of prayer. So my dad kind of told him, okay, he goes, vete dormir, go to sleep. I'll stay here continuing to pray, right? So my brother, he went to bed. And from what he gathers, he drifted off to sleep, but my dad was there until my brother fell asleep in this spiritual battle with this owl, with this lechusa that was perched outside our backyard. Well, as it happens, the next day, my brother got up a little late, right? He got up, and by the time he got up, the rest of the family, my dad and my sisters and those that had come in later on that night, who didn't know what was going on, they were gone. And the only ones in the house was, in fact, I think my sister, Iris. And she was there in the house, and she was eating breakfast, and my brother kind of, shovels into the kitchen. They're there, and he's eating what was left on the stove by my mom, and they were just talking. And then my brother kind of mentions it to my sister Iris, like, hey, did you realize, or did you notice what was happening within the backyard with that bird and dad, right? And she goes, well, it's kind of complicated. He goes, what do you mean? Like, what happened? Well, to make a long story short, and once again, my sister's older. She's older than Vale. Even though she's the youngest of the sisters, she's older than all of us, right? But she kind of told us that, many, many years ago, when we were very young, and even before then, before they knew, that there was a lady that lived, a few blocks down from where we live. She was like the neighborhood or the city kind of, herbalist, curandera, I guess. We call them herbalists now, right? People that are into like, herbs, natural remedies, right? Naturalists. But she was very into that. And in layman's terms, in simpler terms, we all the people of the neighborhoods, thought she was like a witch or like a witch doctor, or like, did those kinds of things, right? She was the one that would do all those the healings with the smoke and the feathers. But anyway, to make a long story short, many years ago, that same lady had told my parents, or my mom and my dad, that she had been casting spells over not so much the family or my parents, but more over my dad, to try to make him fall in love with her, take him away from my mom. And this had been happening for a while when they were very young, and sporadically throughout the years that they lived in Donna. And one of the last times they had any sort of interaction, my dad actually told her, look, I'm a Catholic, I love my wife, I love my God, and any sort of evilness you want to do, my Lord and Savior, he's going to protect me from you, so it doesn't do any good. But that over the years, they had many little kind of, things of this nature happened to them, these paranormal things, right? And they always chalked it up to it was this woman because, I mean, when you boil down to it, just like there is good, and purity in this world, there's dark, there's evil, there's negative stuff in the world, right? So my sister reminded or was telling Valde that this has been going on for a while, and that even in the morning, I guess when they had talked, my mom or my parents and Iris, my sister, they had kind of brought it up just very briefly, didn't talk long about it. But my sister was telling my brother that, yeah, this has been going on for some time, and that my dad was thinking that was that lady, again, trying to get her, instill herself into our lives or in my dad's life, right? As this owl, right? This lechuza, and once again, is it something that you think is true? Well, I don't know, but I'm sure my dad believed it. My brother, as far as what he saw, he can talk about it. But I remember when he told me that story, I was in shock, right? And I was intrigued, and it's one of those things that, once again, a lot of, I guess, families have these things that happen that not everybody knows about it, especially if you're younger, especially if you're not always there to see these things. But yeah. It's a story that even to this day, around this time, I tell my students, about the stories, right? Because it's we hear these stories growing up. It's so ingrained in our culture, especially here in South Texas, that there's a lot of people that say it's true, right? And well, yeah, it's always been one of these things that especially around this time, it's always in my mind floating around, and it really does make for some interesting conversations, especially when you hear similar things happening, different places. But yeah, that's my owl / lechuza / Halloween story, So y'all be safe out there this Halloween, okay? And y'all take care. Bye.